The folded paper trembled between Amara's fingers as she tucked it inside her uniform pocket. Her breath caught in her throat. She had discovered the secret that could destroy everything, the hidden weakness of Kang Dae-hyun, the most feared man in New York. The sound of Italian leather shoes echoed through the mansion corridor, and she felt cold sweat trickling down the back of her neck. "You saw something you shouldn't have seen." His voice was low, dangerous, while his dark eyes fixed on her like a predator's. Amara knew people disappeared for less, but then something shifted, the way he looked at her, as if calculating not her death, but the value of her loyalty. "Now you're my responsibility," Dae-hyun murmured, his hand landing on her shoulder, with a pressure that was both a promise and a threat. "I'll guard your life, but you belong to me now." If you want to discover how this explosive confrontation began and what happened next, subscribe to the channel and leave us in the comments where you're watching from. Each view helps bring more stories like this. Now, let's go back to where it all started. 3 weeks before, Amara Rossi stood in the flickering fluorescent light of her Bushwick studio apartment, staring at the eviction notice taped to her door. 24 years old, with dark curls pulled back in a practical bun and hands already rough from years of cleaning other people's homes, she looked exhausted in a way that went deeper than physical tiredness. The notice gave her 10 days. Behind her, through the thin walls, she could hear Mrs. Chen's television and smell burnt rice from the Rodriguez family upstairs. She clutched her phone, checking her bank balance for the 3rd time that hour. $217. Rent was $2,000, already 3 weeks overdue. The morning sun cut harsh through the cracked window, but Amara had been awake since 4 a.m., having already taken 2 buses to clean an office building in Midtown before her shift at the diner ended at midnight. Her worn Nikes, bought second-hand 2 years ago, had holes in both soles. She'd stuffed cardboard inside to last through winter. Growing up in Detroit after the auto industry collapsed had taught her to make nothing stretch into something. Her mother had worked 3 jobs before the cancer took her. Her father had disappeared when she was 6. But New York was supposed to be different. It was just proving to be the same poverty with higher rent. Her phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. "Final notice. Payment required for continued treatment. $63,000 outstanding." Amara's stomach clenched so hard she tasted bile. Her younger brother, Marcus, 17 years old and still in Detroit with their aunt, was battling leukemia. The experimental treatment at Sloan Kettering was his only real chance, but the insurance had maxed out after the first round. She'd promised him, promised their mother's grave. Every dollar she sent was another day he got to fight. But the dollars were running out faster than time. She'd been in New York for 9 months, working 3 jobs: housekeeping, waitressing, and weekend shifts at a laundromat in Queens. Sleep was a luxury she couldn't afford. One missed shift, one complaint, and she'd lose everything before Marcus got his next treatment. The walls felt like they were closing in, the city's weight crushing her from above. Amara sank onto her mattress on the floor. No bed frame, that cost extra. And let herself cry for exactly 3 minutes. She'd learned to time her breakdowns. Any longer, and she wouldn't be able to stop. At 7:15 a.m., she wiped her face, pulled on her only clean shirt, and checked the job listings one more time. Most paid minimum wage for maximum hours. Then she saw it. Live-in housekeeper needed immediately. Private residence, Upper East Side. Room and board included. Cash payment weekly. Discretion required. The pay was 4 times what she made at all 3 jobs combined. Amara's hand shook as she dialed the number. A woman answered on the first ring, her voice clipped and professional. "Can you start today?" Within 4 hours, Amara had packed her life into 2 garbage bags and was standing outside a Fifth Avenue address that made her question if she'd copied it wrong. The mansion rose 7 stories, limestone and glass, with an iron gate that probably cost more than every car in her Detroit neighborhood combined. Amara pressed the intercom, her heart hammering against her ribs. The gate buzzed open with a sound like money itself. She walked up the marble steps, each one smoother than anything she'd ever touched, and the door opened before she could knock. An older woman stood there, maybe 60, with kind eyes and grey hair pulled into a neat twist. She wore a simple black dress and sensible shoes, and when she smiled, some of the terror in Amara's chest loosened. "You must be Amara. I'm Rosa. I've been with the family for 22 years. Come in, dear. You look like you've been running marathons." Rosa's voice carried the trace of an Italian accent, worn soft with time. Amara stepped inside and the world tilted. The foyer was 3 times the size of her entire apartment. A crystal chandelier hung overhead, catching light and scattering it like diamonds. The floor was white marble, so pristine Amara was afraid her shoes would leave marks. Straight ahead, a double staircase curved upward, and through an archway she glimpsed a living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Rosa noticed her frozen expression and touched her arm gently. "Breathe, dear. It's just a house. A very large, very expensive house, but still just walls and floors." She led Amara through a hallway lined with artwork that looked like it belonged in museums. "Mr. Kang values privacy above all else. You'll clean, prepare meals when the chef is off, and maintain the household. You'll have Sundays free and your own room on the 3rd floor. She paused, her voice dropping. "And Amara, stay out of his study on the 4th floor. That's his private domain. He's not a man who tolerates intrusion." They climbed the stairs, and with each step, Amara felt smaller. Every surface gleamed. Every piece of furniture looked like it cost more than her annual income. Rosa showed her the kitchen first, all stainless steel and Italian marble countertops, with a refrigerator bigger than her entire studio. "You'll prepare breakfast at 7 a.m. sharp. Mr. Kang is particular about his schedule." Then up to the 3rd floor, where Rosa opened a door to reveal a bedroom that stole Amara's breath. Queen-sized bed with crisp white linens, a private bathroom with a shower that had 6 different nozzles, a window overlooking a tree-lined street. It was paradise. "I know this is overwhelming," Rosa said softly, watching Amara's expression, "but you'll adjust. Just remember, keep your head down, do your work, and don't ask questions. Mr. Kang's business is his own." There was something in the way she said business, a weight to the word that made Amara's survival instincts prickle. But she nodded. Questions were a luxury she couldn't afford either. Rosa handed her a uniform, simple black dress, white apron, and left her to settle in. Amara changed quickly, catching her reflection in the full-length mirror. She looked like someone playing dress-up in someone else's life. The next 3 days blurred into routine. Amara woke at 5 a.m., prepared breakfast, cleaned rooms that never seemed dirty, and tried to remain invisible. The mansion was eerily quiet. She rarely saw anyone except Rosa, and occasionally a man named Jin, who handled security and spoke maybe 10 words total. On her 4th morning, Rosa mentioned that Mr. Kang had been away on business but would return that evening. "Make sure the study is spotless," she instructed. "And Amara, if you see him, be respectful. He's not cruel, but he's not warm either. Think of him as a force of nature. You don't argue with a hurricane." That afternoon, Amara was polishing the 2nd floor hallway when she heard the front door open. Male voices drifted up, speaking rapid Korean. She froze, cloth in hand, debating whether to flee or stay perfectly still. Footsteps approached, then silence. Slowly, Amara turned and nearly dropped her cleaning supplies. A man stood at the top of the stairs, watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Kang Dae-hyun was 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of physical presence that made the spacious hallway feel suddenly cramped. He looked maybe 32, dressed in a charcoal Tom Ford suit that fit him like a second skin. His black hair was styled back, revealing sharp cheekbones and a strong jaw. But it was his eyes that trapped her, dark, penetrating, and completely unreadable. A thin scar ran along his left temple, disappearing into his hairline, the only flaw in an otherwise imposing face. "You're the new housekeeper." His voice was low, controlled with barely a trace of accent. It wasn't a question. Amara managed a nod, her mouth suddenly dry. He moved closer, his Italian leather shoes soundless on the marble, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something darker, cigarettes maybe, or gunpowder. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Every instinct screamed danger. This was a man who commanded, who controlled, who didn't tolerate mistakes. "What's your name?" he asked, tilting his head slightly. "Amara Rossi, sir." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "From Detroit?" "Yes, sir. Moved here 9 months ago." Something flickered in his expression, too quick to read. He studied her for a long moment, and Amara had the uncomfortable sensation of being dissected, evaluated, weighed against some invisible standard. Then his gaze dropped to her hands, still clutching the polishing cloth, and one eyebrow rose fractionally. "You work hard." Again, not a question. "I do what's required, sir." A ghost of something, amusement, maybe, or respect, crossed his face. "Rosa speaks well of you. She doesn't speak well of anyone." He turned to leave, then paused. "If you need anything, tell Rosa. This is your home now, as long as you're employed here. Understood?" "Yes, sir." "Thank you, sir." Amara's heart was racing so fast she felt dizzy. Dae-hyun nodded once and walked away, his presence lingering like a storm that had passed, but left the air charged. She stood frozen for a full minute after he disappeared, trying to process what had just happened. There had been something in the way he looked at her. Not lecherous, not dismissive, but curious, like she was a puzzle he couldn't immediately solve. It should have been terrifying. It was terrifying. But underneath the fear was something else, something she couldn't name and definitely shouldn't feel. That night, lying in her too comfortable bed, Amara stared at the ceiling and wondered what kind of man inspired such fear in everyone who spoke his name. Rosa had called him a force of nature. But forces of nature didn't have scars on their temples or wear suits that cost more than hospital bills. They didn't look at housekeepers like they mattered, and they definitely didn't make her pulse race like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, deciding whether to jump. Over the next 2 weeks, Amara fell into a rhythm that felt almost surreal. She'd wake before dawn, prepare Dae-hyun's breakfast, always the same: black coffee, steamed rice, grilled fish and kimchi, and leave it precisely arranged in the dining room by 7 a.m. He never acknowledged her presence during these mornings, but she'd noticed he always finished everything on his plate. Small victories. Rosa had warned her that the previous 3 housekeepers hadn't lasted more than a week each. One had been fired for asking too many questions. Another had stolen a decorative vase, thinking it was costume jewelry. It was worth $40,000. The third had simply vanished one night, too terrified to even collect her final paycheck. But Amara needed this job too desperately to make mistakes. Every Friday, Rosa handed her an envelope with $3,000 cash. No taxes, no paper trail, no questions. Amara sent half immediately to Detroit for Marcus's treatment, paid off a chunk of her debt, and for the first time in her adult life, bought groceries without calculating every cent. The hospital called less frequently. Her brother's voice on their weekly calls sounded stronger. The knot of panic that had lived in her chest for months finally began to loosen. She could breathe here. Even if breathing meant walking on eggshells around a man who radiated danger like heat from asphalt in August. Dae-hyun himself remained an enigma. Some days she'd catch glimpses of him in perfectly tailored suits, speaking rapid Korean into his phone, his voice cold enough to freeze blood. Other days, he'd disappear entirely, and Rosa would instruct her to prepare his study for private meetings. Amara learned not to ask what those meetings entailed, especially after she'd accidentally walked past the study door one evening and heard raised voices, then a sound like something heavy hitting a wall, followed by silence so thick it felt suffocating. Jin had appeared from nowhere, guided her away with a hand on her elbow and said quietly, "Mr. Kang values discretion above all else, remember that." But there were other moments, smaller ones. That confused her. Like the morning she'd been cleaning the second-floor library and found Dae-hyun standing by the window, staring out at the rain-soaked streets below. He hadn't noticed her, and for once, his face was unguarded. He looked tired. Not physically exhausted, but soul-tired, the kind that came from carrying weight no one else could see. Amara had started to back away silently when he spoke without turning. "Do you miss Detroit?" The question caught her so off guard she almost dropped her dustcloth. "Sometimes, sir. It's home. But home doesn't pay hospital bills." He'd turned then, studying her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "What's his name?" "Your brother." "Marcus, sir. He's 17. "And the treatment is working." Amara's throat tightened. No one had asked her that before. not with genuine curiosity anyway. Yes, sir, the doctors are optimistic. Dae-hyun nodded slowly, then did something that shocked her into silence. He walked to his desk, wrote something on a card and handed it to her. My personal physician. If your brother needs a consultation or second opinion, call this number. Tell them I sent you. Amara stared at the embossed card, her vision blurring. Sir, I can't. You can. His voice was firm, brooking no argument. And you will. Understood? Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. She'd left the room before the tears could fall, clutching that card like it was a lifeline. Because it was. After that, something shifted. Dae-hyun began appearing more frequently when she was working, not hovering exactly, but present. He'd ask brief questions about her day, about Marcus's progress, about whether she was settling in. The conversations never lasted more than a few minutes, but they felt significant in a way Amara couldn't articulate. Rosa noticed too. He likes you, the older woman said one afternoon while they were preparing dinner. In 22 years, I've never seen him take interest in household staff. You must remind him of someone. Or something. Amara didn't know how to respond to that, so she focused on chopping vegetables and tried not to think about the way her pulse quickened whenever she heard his footsteps in the hall. 3 weeks into her employment, everything changed. Amara was in the 4th floor hallway, having been specifically instructed by Rosa to dust the artwork outside Dae-hyun's study. The door was supposed to be locked. It always was, but today it stood slightly ajar. She could hear voices inside, Dae-hyun's low and controlled, and another man speaking in accented English. The Italians are circling. Don Vittorio knows you're vulnerable. I'm not vulnerable. Dae-hyun's voice could have cut glass. The boy is protected. Is he? Because my sources say otherwise. They say there's documentation, a will, names, dates, everything needed to destabilize the dragons and take your territory. Amara's blood ran cold. She should walk away. She should run. But her feet stayed frozen, and her ears kept betraying her. That documentation doesn't exist, Dae-hyun said, but there was something in his tone, a hairline fracture in his usual confidence. Then you have nothing to worry about, unless it does exist, and someone finds it first. Footsteps approached the door. Amara fled, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. She made it to the 3rd floor linen closet and pressed herself into the shadows, struggling to control her breathing. What had she just heard? What boy? What documentation? And why did it sound like Dae-hyun's life depended on it staying hidden? That night she couldn't sleep. Every creak of the old mansion made her jump. She kept thinking about the conversation, about the fear she'd heard underneath Dae-hyun's controlled exterior. At 2 a.m., she finally gave up on sleep and decided to make herself tea in the kitchen. She was halfway down the stairs when she heard a sound from above, a door opening on the 4th floor. Dae-hyun appeared at the top of the staircase, dressed in black slacks and an unbuttoned white shirt, looking as exhausted as she felt. Their eyes met. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he descended slowly, and Amara's survival instincts warred with something more dangerous. Curiosity. Can't sleep? He asked when he reached her level. No, sir. I was just making tea. I know. I heard you. He continued past her toward the kitchen, and after a hesitation that felt like standing on a precipice, Amara followed. He moved through the space with easy familiarity, pulling down 2 cups, heating water, selecting tea bags with the precision he applied to everything. They sat across from each other at the kitchen island, the enormous mansion silent around them except for the soft whistle of the kettle. You work too hard, Dae-hyun said finally. You're up before dawn and I've seen lights in your room past midnight. Habit, sir, hard to break. Dae-hyun. She blinked. Sir? When it's just us, call me Dae-hyun. I'm tired of being sir in my own home at 2 in the morning. There was something almost vulnerable in the admission, and it made Amara's chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Okay, Dae-hyun. His name felt foreign on her tongue, intimate in a way that shouldn't matter but did. They drank their tea in comfortable silence, and for those stolen minutes, Amara forgot he was the most feared man in New York. He was just someone who couldn't sleep, same as her, someone carrying weight that bent his shoulders when he thought no one was looking. When she finally returned to her room, her teacup washed and dried, she lay in bed and wondered what the hell she was doing, feeling things she had no business feeling for a man who probably had blood on his hands. The next morning, everything shattered. Amara was in the dining room clearing breakfast dishes when the front door opened and a woman's voice rang through the foyer like crystal shattering. "Darling, I'm home. Did you miss me terribly?" Amara turned and felt the air leave her lungs. The woman who swept into the room was stunning in the way that money could buy. Tall, blonde, with the kind of sharp beauty that came from excellent surgeons and better stylists. She wore a cream Chanel suit that probably cost more than Amara's entire year of salary, and her heels clicked against the marble like a countdown. Her eyes, ice blue and calculating, landed on Amara with the warmth of a snake sizing up prey. "Oh, you must be the new help." The woman's smile was all teeth, no kindness. "I'm Victoria Ashford, Mr. Kang's fiancée." The word hit Amara like a physical blow, though she had no right to feel anything about it. Of course he had a fiancée. Men like Dae-hyun didn't stay single. Victoria circled closer, her gaze raking over Amara's simple uniform with barely concealed disdain. "You're quite young for a housekeeper, and rather pretty in a common sort of way. I do hope you understand your place here." "Yes, ma'am." Amara's voice came out steady despite the nausea churning in her stomach. "I'm here to work, nothing more." "Good. Because Dae-hyun has very particular standards. I'd hate for you to disappoint him and lose this generous opportunity." The threat was clear, wrapped in sugary politeness. Victoria swept past, leaving a cloud of cloying Chanel No. 5 in her wake, and Amara stood frozen in the dining room, her hands trembling around the breakfast plate. Rosa appeared in the doorway, her expression sympathetic. "She's been in Milan for 3 months. I'd hoped she'd stay longer." "They're engaged," Amara whispered. Rosa's mouth tightened. "Arranged by their families. Business merger more than marriage. But yes, technically engaged. Just remember, dear, that woman is poison in expensive packaging. Stay out of her way." But staying out of Victoria's way proved impossible. Over the following week, Victoria made Amara's life a carefully orchestrated hell. It started small. Comments about mist dust on surfaces that gleamed. Complaints about meals that were perfectly prepared. Subtle suggestions to Dae-hyun that perhaps the staff needed upgrading. Amara kept her head down and her mouth shut, but every interaction left her feeling smaller, dirtier, less than. Victoria had a gift for cruelty that came wrapped in concern. "Poor dear, you look exhausted. Perhaps this position is too demanding for someone of your limited experience," she'd say in front of Rosa and Jin, her smile saccharine and venomous. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. Dae-hyun was hosting a business dinner, 6 men in expensive suits, speaking a mixture of Korean, Mandarin, and English, their conversation laden with unspoken threats. Amara was serving the final course when Victoria appeared in the doorway, resplendent in a red silk gown that cost more than a car. She watched Amara work with narrowed eyes, then suddenly gasped, her hand flying to her throat. "My necklace, it's gone. The diamond pendant Dae-hyun gave me. It was right here on the side table." All conversation stopped. Every eye turned to Amara, who stood frozen with a serving tray in her hands. "I didn't take anything," Amara said, her voice steady despite the ice flooding her veins. Victoria's eyes filled with theatrical tears. "I'm not accusing anyone, but you were the only one in my room today, weren't you?" "Cleaning?" It was true. Amara had cleaned the master suite that morning. Her stomach dropped. "I didn't see any necklace. I didn't take anything." "Then you won't mind if we check your room," Victoria said sweetly, already moving toward the door. "Just to clear this up, of course. Dae-hyun, darling, perhaps Jin could accompany us for everyone's peace of mind." Dae-hyun's expression was unreadable, his jaw tight. He nodded once to Jin, and Amara's world tilted sideways. They found the necklace in her dresser drawer, tucked beneath her folded uniform. Amara stared at it, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. This isn't, someone put this here." Her voice sounded distant, drowning. Victoria's face arranged itself into wounded sympathy. "Oh, Amara, I wanted to believe in you. Dae-hyun, I'm so sorry. I know you trusted her, but we can't have thieves in the house. What if she'd taken something truly valuable? What if... Enough. Dae-hyun's voice cut through the room like a blade. He looked at Amara, and she saw something in his eyes that made her want to disappear. Disappointment. Pack your things. You have 1 hour. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. Amara's ears rang. This couldn't be happening. She'd been so careful, so invisible, so perfect. Please, she heard herself say, hating the desperation in her voice. Please, I didn't do this. I wouldn't. I needed this job. I would never. 1 hour, Dae-hyun repeated and walked out. Victoria's smile as she followed him was pure triumph. Amara stood in her room, surrounded by the few possessions she owned, and felt the walls closing in. Without this job, she had nothing. No money for Marcus's treatment, no way to pay her debts. She'd be back in that Bushwick studio within days, evicted within weeks. Marcus would die because she'd been too stupid to see she was being set up. Rosa found her 20 minutes later, still frozen in place. Child, you need to pack. I didn't do it, Amara whispered. I know. Victoria's been planning this since she arrived. I've seen her kind before. Rosa's face was grave. But mister, Kang can't be seen protecting staff who steal from family. It's a weakness his enemies would exploit. So I'm just collateral damage. The bitterness in Amara's voice surprised even her. Rosa touched her shoulder gently. Listen to me. Mr. Kang's study, the locked one on the 4th floor. I've seen Victoria coming and going from there. She has a key she shouldn't have. Whatever she's looking for, it's important enough to risk his fury. If you want to clear your name, you need to find out what it is. Amara's survival instincts warred with something more dangerous, the need to prove she wasn't a thief, wasn't disposable, wasn't nothing. He'll kill me if he catches me in there. He'll destroy you if you leave like this. At least this way. You'll know the truth. Rosa pressed something into Amara's hand. A key card. I've been here 22 years. I have access to everything. You have 30 minutes before Jin comes to escort you out. Use them wisely. Then she left, and Amara was alone with the most dangerous decision of her life. She took the stairs to the 4th floor, her heart hammering so hard she thought her ribs might crack. The study door opened silently. Inside, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, and a massive mahogany desk dominated the space. Everything was meticulously organized, from the perfectly aligned pens to the leather-bound folders stacked with geometric precision. Amara moved quickly, checking drawers, rifling through papers, finding nothing but business documents in Korean and English. She was about to give up when she noticed a book on the shelf that sat fractionally out of alignment. She pulled it, and a hidden panel clicked open behind the desk. Inside was a safe. Her hands shook as she tried the most obvious combination. Dae-hyun's birthday, which she'd seen on a document. Nothing. Then she tried the date Victoria had mentioned once, bragging about when they'd met. The safe opened with a soft beep that sounded like thunder in the silent room. Inside were documents, photographs, and a single folder marked with a red seal. Amara pulled it out and her breath stopped. The first page was a will dated 3 years ago, naming a beneficiary, Christopher Kang, age 7, residing in San Francisco under protective custody. The next pages detailed monthly payments, security arrangements, and a letter in Korean with an English translation paperclipped to it. My son, my weakness, my greatest secret, and my greatest vulnerability. If my enemies discover him, they will use him to destroy everything I've built. I hide him not out of shame, but out of love. His mother was my enemy's daughter. Our union was forbidden, but he exists, and he is innocent, and I will burn the world down before I let anyone harm him. Amara's hands trembled as she photographed every page with her phone. This was the secret she'd overheard them discussing. This was Dae-hyun's weakness, a 7-year-old boy who didn't even know his father, and Victoria was looking for it, which meant Don Vittorio and the Italians already knew it existed. She was folding the documents to return them when she heard voices in the hallway, male voices, speaking Italian. Panic seized her. She shoved the folder back, closed the safe, and looked desperately for an exit. The window was 40 feet above the ground. The door was the only way out, and it was blocked by whoever was coming. The door handle turned. Amara pressed herself against the wall behind a bookshelf, making herself as small as possible. 2 men entered, both in dark suits, both armed. She could see the bulge of shoulder holsters. They spoke rapid Italian, and she caught enough words to understand they were searching for the same documents she'd just found. Her phone was still clutched in her hand, the photograph stored. If they found her, if they took her phone, Marcus died, and so did Dae-hyun's son. The men moved systematically through the study, checking drawers, examining the bookshelves. One of them paused directly in front of her hiding spot. She held her breath until her lungs burned. Then from downstairs she heard shouting. The men looked at each other, said something sharp, and left quickly. Amara waited 30 seconds that felt like hours, then fled. She made it to the back stairs before Jin appeared, blocking her path. His expression was carefully neutral. "Ms. Rossi, your hour is up. Jin, please, I need to—" "Now." His hand closed around her elbow, firm but not cruel, and he guided her toward the service entrance. But as they passed through the kitchen, he leaned close and whispered, "The men in the study, did you see them?" She nodded fractionally. "Good. Mr. Kang needs to know. But first, you need to leave through the front. Make it visible. Let them think you're gone." He pressed a card into her hand. "This is a safe house in Brooklyn. Go there. Wait, someone will contact you. Why are you helping me?" "Because Rosa believes you. And I trust Rosa more than I trust anyone in this world. Now go." Amara left through the front entrance, carrying her 2 garbage bags, putting on a performance of humiliation for anyone watching. She took the subway to Brooklyn, found the address Jin had given her, a small apartment above a Korean grocery, and let herself in with the key taped to the back of the card. The space was sparse but clean. A bed, a table, a window overlooking the street. She sat on the bed and finally let herself fall apart. Sobs tore through her chest, ugly and raw. She'd lost everything. Again. The only difference was, this time, she had information that could save or damn the only person who'd shown her genuine kindness in this brutal city. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Tomorrow night, midnight, the address below. Come alone, tell no one. K." Below was an address in Red Hook, down by the docks. Every instinct screamed trap. But what choice did she have? She cleaned herself up, ate the ramen she found in the apartment's tiny kitchen, and tried to sleep. Tomorrow night, she'd either get answers or get killed. At this point, she wasn't sure which outcome scared her more. Midnight found Amara standing outside a warehouse in Red Hook, the East River lapping against the docks behind her, fog rolling in thick enough to taste. She'd almost turned back 6 times. The warehouse door opened and Jin appeared, gesturing her inside. The space was mostly empty except for a few crates and a single overhead light. Dae-hyun stood beneath it, dressed in all black, his face harder than she'd ever seen it. He wasn't alone. 3 other men flanked him, all armed. Amara's mouth went dry. "You came," Dae-hyun said. His voice gave nothing away. "You asked me to. I wasn't sure you would, after everything. After you threw me out for something I didn't do, you mean?" The words came out sharper than she intended, but she was done being invisible. Dae-hyun's expression shifted fractionally, something like respect. "Tell me about the men you saw in my study." So Amara did. She described them, their conversation, their search. When she finished, Dae-hyun exchanged glances with his men. "Italians. Don Vittorio's soldiers. Rosa was right. Someone on the inside is feeding them information." "Victoria," Amara said flatly. Dae-hyun's jaw clenched. "You have proof?" "I have this." She pulled out her phone, pulled up the photographs, and handed it to him. "I'm sorry I went into your study. I was desperate. But I found what Victoria was looking for, what the Italians want. Your son." The silence that followed was crushing. Dae-hyun stared at the photographs, his knuckles white around the phone. When he finally looked up, his eyes were black with fury, but not directed at her. "How much did you read?" "Enough to know he's 7. His name is Christopher. And he's in danger because someone wants to use him against you. Amara lifted her chin. I also know you're not the monster everyone thinks you are. Monsters don't protect their children. They don't pay for strangers' brothers' medical treatments. They don't make tea at 2 a.m. because someone can't sleep. Something cracked in Dae-hyun's expression. He closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, he looked exhausted. I didn't believe you stole the necklace, but I had to make them think I did. Victoria has connections to the Italian families. If she suspected I was protecting you, she'd know I mattered, and anything that matters to you is a target. Amara understood suddenly, completely. You were protecting me by throwing me out. Yes, and now you've walked right back into the fire by coming here. His voice dropped. Why? Because you asked me to, and because someone needs to tell you that the woman you're engaged to is trying to destroy you. Dae-hyun moved closer, and Amara's breath caught. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her face with surprising gentleness. Do you understand what you've done? By taking those photographs, by coming here, you've made yourself part of this. There's no walking away now. I never could walk away. Not after you helped Marcus, not after... She stopped herself, but his eyes darkened with understanding. Say it, he ordered softly. Not after I realized I care what happens to you. Even though I shouldn't. Even though you're engaged and dangerous and probably going to get me killed. The words hung between them, impossible to take back. I was never going to marry her, Dae-hyun said quietly. It was arrangement, politics, nothing more. I've been looking for a way out that wouldn't start a war. You just handed me one. He turned to his men. Pull the surveillance from the past week. I want everything. Victoria's movements, her calls, everyone she's met with. Get Christopher's security team on alert. If Don Vittorio moves on him, I want to know 30 seconds before it happens. To Amara, he said, You'll stay in the Brooklyn safe house. Jin will guard you. Don't leave. Don't contact anyone. Don't... No. Amara surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. I'm not hiding while you clean up my mess. I started this. Let me help finish it. Absolutely not. You have no idea what you're asking. I have every idea. You need Victoria to expose herself. You need proof she's working with the Italians. And the only way to get that is to give her exactly what she wants. Amara's heart raced, but her voice stayed steady. Let me be the bait. Dae-hyun looked at her like she'd lost her mind. No, out of the question. I won't. You don't have another choice. She thinks I'm gone, humiliated, desperate. If I come back, if I offer to sell her the information about Christopher, she'll jump at it, and you'll have your proof. The men around them exchanged glances. Jin stepped forward. She's right, it's the fastest way. We control the environment, wire her, catch Victoria in the act. And when Victoria realizes it's a trap, when Don Vittorio's men show up armed, Dae-hyun's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. She dies. Is that acceptable to you? Amara met his eyes steadily. Is your son dying acceptable to you? Because that's what happens if we do nothing. The standoff lasted 10 heartbeats. Then Dae-hyun exhaled slowly and turned away. Fine. But we do this my way. Complete surveillance, full tactical support, and the second I say abort you run, understood? Understood. And Amara? He looked back at her, his expression fierce. If anything happens to you, I will burn this entire city to the ground. Don't make me become the monster everyone already thinks I am. The trap was set for Friday night at a gala in the Empire State Building, one of those charity events where New York's elite mingled with organized crime in designer gowns and $1,000 suits, pretending the lines between them weren't blurred beyond recognition. Dae-hyun had called Victoria personally, told her he'd be attending with business associates, asked her to play the perfect fiancé. She'd agreed with sugary enthusiasm that made Amara's skin crawl through the phone's speaker. What Victoria didn't know was that Amara would be there too, wearing a wire, carrying bait that would end her. Amara stood in the Brooklyn safe house bathroom, staring at her reflection. Jin had brought her a dress, simple black, elegant but understated, the kind that let you blend into the background until you chose not to. Rosa had appeared an hour ago with makeup and shoes, transforming her from invisible housekeeper into someone who belonged in that world, at least superficially. "You're brave," Rosa had said while fastening a delicate necklace around Amara's throat. Hidden in the pendant was a microphone sensitive enough to catch whispers. "Brave or stupid, I haven't decided which. Sometimes they're the same thing, child." Now, standing in the Empire State Building's 86th floor ballroom surrounded by crystal and champagne and people who'd never worried about hospital bills in their lives, Amara felt the full weight of what she was attempting. Dae-hyun stood across the room in a black tuxedo that fit him like sin, Victoria draped on his arm in ice blue silk, her laugh carrying above the string quartet. He hadn't looked at Amara once, but she felt his awareness of her like heat. Jin and 2 other men circulated through the crowd, invisible as furniture, deadly as knives. The plan was simple. Amara would approach Victoria privately, offer to sell the information about Christopher, and get her confession on tape. Simple, suicidal, possibly both. She waited until Victoria excused herself to the ladies' room, then followed. The bathroom was all marble and gold fixtures, obscenely luxurious. Victoria was reapplying lipstick when Amara entered. Their eyes met in the mirror, and Victoria's expression cycled through surprise, contempt, and calculation in 3 seconds flat. Well, the little thief. I'm surprised you have the audacity to show your face here." "I'm surprised you have the audacity to pretend you didn't set me up," Amara said evenly. "But I'm not here to argue. I'm here to make a deal." Victoria turned, one perfectly sculpted eyebrow raised. "A deal? How desperate you must be." "Desperate enough to know what you're looking for. The documents about Dae-hyun's son, Christopher Kang, age 7, San Francisco." Amara watched Victoria's face and saw the exact moment greed overtook caution. "I have photographs, every page, names, locations, security details, everything Don Vittorio would pay handsomely for." Victoria's smile was a razor blade. "And why would you give me this?" "Because you destroyed my life. I want revenge. And I want money. $100,000 and the information is yours." "You expect me to believe you betrayed Dae-hyun like that? After he was so generous with you?" Victoria's voice dripped poison. "Generous? He threw me out for a crime you committed. He humiliated me. And for what? To protect his precious reputation?" Amara let bitterness color her words. "I owe him nothing, but I owe you everything. So yes, I'll betray him. Gladly. Do we have a deal or not?" Victoria studied her for a long moment, suspicion warring with desire. Then she smiled. "Show me proof. Show me you actually have the documents." Amara pulled out her phone, pulled up one photograph, just enough to prove she wasn't bluffing. Victoria's eyes glittered. "There's a service corridor on the 90th floor. Meet me there in 10 minutes. Bring your phone. I'll bring the cash." Victoria swept out, and Amara gripped the marble counter, her legs shaking, the wire pressed against her collarbone like a brand. Through the hidden earpiece Jin had fitted her with, she heard Dae-hyun's voice, low and controlled. "Good. I'm moving into position. Jin will cover the corridor entrance. Do not under any circumstances go in alone. Wait for my signal." But when Amara reached the service corridor 10 minutes later, Victoria wasn't alone. 3 men stood with her, the same Italian soldiers Amara had seen in Dae-hyun's study, and they were all armed. "Did you really think I was that stupid?" Victoria's voice was cold now, the sugar stripped away to reveal poison underneath. "Did you think I wouldn't check to see if you were wired? That I wouldn't have insurance?" She gestured, and one of the men grabbed Amara, ripping open her necklace. The pendant clattered to the floor, microphone destroyed. Amara's blood turned to ice. "Here's what's going to happen," Victoria continued. "You're going to unlock that phone and give us every photograph. Then you're going to disappear permanently. And Dae-hyun will spend the rest of his very short life wondering what happened to the little housemaid who betrayed him." "He'll know it was you," Amara managed, even as the man's grip tightened on her arm. "He'll know and he'll destroy you." "He'll try, but by then, Don Vittorio will have the boy, and the dragons will fall and Dae-hyun will be dead. Everyone wins. Well, except you." Victoria reached for the phone in Amara's hand. That's when the lights went out. The corridor plunged into absolute darkness, and Amara felt the man's grip loosen in surprise. She drove her elbow backward into what she hoped was his ribs, felt impact, and ran blind. Gunshots exploded behind her, deafening in the enclosed space. She hit a wall, felt along it desperately for a door, any door. Then hands grabbed her, different hands, familiar, and Jin's voice said urgently, "Down, now." She dropped as more gunshots lit up the darkness like lightning. When the emergency lights flickered on 30 seconds later, all 3 Italian men were on the ground, disarmed and surrounded by Dae-hyun's people. Victoria stood frozen, her ice blue dress splattered with someone else's blood, her face a mask of fury and disbelief. Dae-hyun emerged from the shadows like an avenging angel, his tuxedo jacket discarded, a gun loose in his right hand. He walked past Victoria without looking at her, straight to Amara. "Are you hurt?" His hands moved over her face, her arms checking for injuries with surprising gentleness. "I'm fine, I'm okay." "You're bleeding." He touched her temple, and his fingers came away red. She hadn't even felt it. "It's nothing. Dae-hyun, the photographs." "I know. The phone was broadcasting to my servers the whole time. We have everything. Her confession, the Italians' involvement, all of it." He finally turned to Victoria, and his expression could have frozen hell. "You made a critical mistake. You underestimated what I would burn down to protect what's mine." "This isn't over," Victoria spat. Don Vittorio is currently being arrested by the FBI, along with 18 members of his organization. Turns out when you provide federal prosecutors with evidence of racketeering, conspiracy, and attempted kidnapping of a minor, they move remarkably fast. Dae-hyun's smile was terrifying. "You're finished, Victoria. All of you." The FBI arrived 6 minutes later, and Amara watched as they led Victoria away in handcuffs, still screaming threats and obscenities. The Italian men went next, then a parade of others, associates, conspirators, people whose names Amara didn't know but whose crimes were apparently extensive. Dae-hyun spoke with the agents briefly, his demeanor completely different, professional, controlled, almost friendly. When they finally left, the corridor was silent, except for Amara's ragged breathing and the ringing in her ears from the gunshots. "Come on," Dae-hyun said quietly, taking her hand. "Let's get you looked at." They ended up back at the mansion at 3 a.m., the party long over, the city sleeping around them. A private doctor stitched the cut on Amara's temple, 6 stitches, nothing serious, and left them alone in the study where this had all begun. Dae-hyun poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed her one. They drank in silence, the adrenaline finally fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "I need to tell you something," Dae-hyun said finally. "Christopher's mother died in childbirth. Complications. She was Chinese mafia, Yang family, Don Vittorio's allies. Our relationship was forbidden, dangerous, doomed from the start. But I loved her, and when she died, when they gave me this tiny, perfect son, I made a choice. I could keep him close and watch him become a target, or I could hide him and let him have a chance at a normal life. So you sent him away," Amara said softly. "To San Francisco, to people I trust absolutely. He thinks I'm his uncle. He has a good life, school, friends, safety. But I've missed every birthday, every milestone, every moment. I've sacrificed being his father to keep him alive." Dae-hyun's voice cracked, and Victoria was going to destroy all of that, was going to get him killed to advance her own greed. But she didn't, because you stopped her. We stopped her. Amara set down her glass and did something insane. She crossed to him and took his hands, and now maybe you can actually be his father, not just his protector. Dae-hyun looked at their joined hands, then at her face, and something shifted in his expression. "You risked your life tonight, for a child you've never met, for a man who threw you out of his house, for a man who paid for my brother's treatment, who made me tea at 2 a.m., who looked at me like I was worth seeing." Amara's voice was barely a whisper. "You're not the monster, Dae-hyun. You're just a man trying to protect what he loves. I understand that better than anyone." He pulled her closer slowly, giving her every chance to retreat. She didn't. When his lips met hers, it felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff simultaneously, terrifying and perfect and inevitable. 2 weeks later, Amara stood in the mansion's kitchen making breakfast when a small voice said, "Are you my dad's girlfriend?" She turned to find a little boy with Dae-hyun's eyes and his mother's delicate features staring at her with solemn curiosity. Christopher had arrived from San Francisco 3 days ago, and Dae-hyun was navigating fatherhood with the same intensity he applied to everything else, reading parenting books at midnight, taking the boy to Central Park, learning to braid hair through YouTube tutorials. It was adorable and heartbreaking and beautiful. "I'm Amara," she said, kneeling to his level. "And you're Christopher. Your dad's told me a lot about you. He told me about you too. He said you're brave, and that you helped keep me safe." "We kept each other safe," Amara corrected gently. "That's what people do when they care about each other." Christopher considered this, then nodded seriously. "Okay. Can you make pancakes? Dad tried, but they were really bad." She laughed, and the sound felt like freedom. "I can definitely make pancakes. Why don't you help me?" They were mid-batter when Dae-hyun appeared in the doorway, watching them with an expression so tender it made Amara's chest ache. Later, after Christopher was occupied with cartoons in the living room, Dae-hyun pulled her into his study, no longer a place of secrets but just a room, and kissed her breathless. "I spoke with Marcus's doctors," he said when they finally broke apart. "The treatment is working. He's in remission. He'll need monitoring, but they're optimistic." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "You didn't have to. I wanted to. Your family is important to you. That makes them important to me." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm bringing him to New York next month. He should meet his sisters." "What are you exactly? I never asked if you wanted a label." "How about the woman who's not going anywhere?" Amara suggested. "Because I'm not. You're stuck with me, Kang Dae-hyun. You and Christopher both." "Good." His smile was rare and genuine, transforming his entire face. "Because I'm not letting you go. Not now. Not ever. You belong here. With us." Outside the study windows, New York stretched vast and glittering, full of dangers and possibilities in equal measure. But inside these walls, in this moment, Amara felt something she'd thought she'd lost forever. Hope. Not just for survival, but for actual happiness. For a future built on more than desperation. For a family she'd found in the most unlikely place. Dae-hyun had promised to guard her life, but somewhere along the way they'd both learned something more important: how to guard each other's hearts.